What is up, Packers Nation? Welcome into our members-only Q&A here on the Pack-A-Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter. You know, I don't even need to go over that because you guys are awesome and members and subscribe and do everything like that already. So thank you so much for being here. And I will let you know, I do have about 50 minutes today. So I do have to give about a 10-minute gap there. I have a podcast that I'm going to be recording right after this. So I do have to have just a little bit of a leeway in there, but I will try to get to as many questions as I can over the next 50 minutes or so. I know there's a lot of topics to discuss. There's already a lot of questions in chat. So let me shut up and get to your amazing questions right away. Start with JRS. Really wonder what the hell is going on in Minnesota with Pettine saying he basically did not like Flores. Is he really being blackballed? Is he just super abrasive or a little bit of both? Don't know what to tell you, JRS. I know he's had a lot of success in Minnesota. They clearly wanted him back. They gave him a big extension. He clearly had suitors throughout the league. So whatever it is, I actually think it probably comes off looking worse for Mike Pettine either way. Now, it may not matter because Pettine's retiring anyway. And if he's not looking for a job again, then he can go out and say whatever he wants to say. I would say that it probably would be like enough of a red flag for me that if I were a team looking for a head coach, just with some of the stuff that's gone on, I'd be like, we really, really need to vet this. But without being there, it's tough to say. And again, he's had extremely successful defenses. So it's tough to kind of say, anything against that. But again, if I was looking for a head coach, I would make sure I was dotting my I's and crossing my T's. Watching JSN and Gonzalez, do you think this team would be better if Goody polled Packers fans to determine all of his first round picks? Only one he got over on us was Love, but that's a big one. He's got a franchise quarterback. We would not have. You also probably get T. Higgins in that situation. I don't know who Green Bay's quarterback would be if they never went with Jordan Love. So you could probably argue that even if every single one of those other picks was right, I don't know, maybe Goody's good enough to find another quarterback, some way, shape, or form. Maybe Malik Willis eventually could have been that quarterback for them somewhere down the road. But the quarterback one is almost worth it in and of itself. Obviously, Jair Alexander was a fantastic pick at the time. Rashawn Gary was a good pick for a chunk of time, really prior to the ACL injury. Not the best. Brian Burns, who I think a lot of people, myself included, wanted, would have been better. I think everyone can openly say that. But yeah, he's not done well with first round picks, but we don't have to worry about that right now because Green Bay doesn't have another first round pick until 2028. So we can worry about that at that point in time. If Linderbaum reaches free agency, why not sell the farm for him? You win and lose in the trenches. We need a center, and you win into win now mode with the Parsons trade. Could they do something like that? Yes, I say begrudgingly. You can always find ways to make it happen. I don't know if you guys have looked at the free agent market. It's barren. It is absolutely insanely barren. It is a ugly, ugly free agent market. I will add on top of that there are teams with $100 million to spend in free agency. There are teams with $80 million to spend, $70 million to spend. And I'll just, spoiler alert, Green Bay is not one of those teams. Tyler Linderbaum, if he comes available in free agency, might end up being one of the highest paid offensive linemen in NFL history simply because they have, he's going to be one of the top 2 to 3 free agents available, and teams just have stupid money to spend, and there's not good enough players to spend it on. And I just think no matter what, I think Green Bay gets, do you want to spend $30 million a year on Tyler Linderbaum? The answer is probably no, not where Green Bay's at right now. And maybe it doesn't get quite that high, but it could get stupid. It could get really stupid really fast with how much money he makes. Like, it wouldn't stun me if he got, I think 4 years, 100 million is probably the starting spot. I'd probably go, if Aaron Banks is getting 22 million, Linderbaum's getting more than that. Like, is it 4 years, 120 million for Linderbaum? I don't know, but I think it's going to be insane money. And I don't think Green Bay is in the neighborhood to get involved in any sort of contract like that. I would love him in Green Bay. Don't get me wrong. And if there were, 20 free agents on the market that were better than him and everyone was fighting for those and Linderbaum, slipped through the cracks a little bit, sure. I just don't think that that's going to happen. Any indications on if Ganon will try to bring any additional staff in, or are those decisions solely on Matt LaFleur? It'll probably be a collective situation. I'm sure Matt LaFleur is not, and I'm sure too that the front office doesn't want to move on from assistant coaches and pay them money to not be here. But I think there'll be a collective conversation on that, and they'll have to kind of vet that out to see who Ganon thinks is really important to bring in, what ones on the current staff they can continue to keep, and I'm sure there's going to be some opportunity there, but that's one that we're just going to have to kind of wait and see on. And it's tough to glean right now what exactly will go on to make any changes on the defensive staff besides the defensive coordinator hire. As it stands right now, passing on JSN and Christian Gonzalez for LVN seems like a big miss. Do you put that move on Goody's decision or no? It's on Goody. That's 100% on Goody. Listen, I had 4 players that I liked at that point in time. LVN was one of them. Broderick Jones, the offensive tackle, and then JSN and Christian Gonzalez. And I was a huge Christian Gonzalez guy. It would have been Gonzalez for me all day, every day. And it's just unfortunate that they didn't, but those are going to be ones. Now, everyone misses on this stuff, right? There are worse egregious mistakes. The Commanders took Emmanuel Forbes at corner, 1 pick before Christian Gonzalez was off the board, when Christian Gonzalez was everyone's, expected top corner off the board. They went with Forbes instead, and then they cut him a couple of years, I think like a year later. Like that's an egregious mistake, right? LVN's a good football player. He can help you. Like it's not some player that's a complete and utter bust, but he certainly is no JSN, and he's certainly no Christian Gonzalez. But when you make those decisions, and again, every GM is going to have these that you can point to, but when you take a Josh Myers over a Creed Humphrey, and they're the same position and they're both super athletic, and Creed Humphrey's the #1 consensus player on the board, but certainly on the offensive line and certainly at center at that point in time, that's a Goody issue. They misread it, right? And then when you do, it's a little bit different for, position to position with LVN, but when you have 2 players like that on the board and you miss on it, it is. And when you're picking that early in the draft, I don't know who they ultimately had on their board at that point in time, but the interesting thing is that might've been one where the 2023? Yeah, that might have been one actually where the Rodgers trade actually screwed Green Bay. And if you're not familiar, Green Bay was set to pick at pick 15, and the Jets were expected to pick at pick 13. Okay. And in between them, sandwiched, was New England at pick 14. Jets pick at 13. I don't know who they ultimately pick. Maybe they take LVN, but I think they really liked Will McDonald. So Will McDonald probably goes 13. Jets probably still get their guy. New England traded out at 14. And the expectation was that the reason they traded out was because they liked LVN, wanted to take Lucas Van Ness, and Green Bay took him 1 spot before. So New England traded out. So LVN then goes pick 14 to New England. Green Bay is on the clock at pick 15. And your 2 probably most likely candidates to get selected there at that point in time would have then been, there's a possibility that Broderick Jones would have been, if he's still on the clock there, because New England doesn't trade down. But maybe then the Steelers trade with Green Bay. Steelers get Broderick Jones. Green Bay moves down a little bit to pick 17 in that situation. And at pick 17, your players that are available: Christian Gonzalez, Jack Campbell, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Zay Flowers. And if I remember correctly, don't quote me on this, but if I remember correctly, the player that Green Bay, I think, actually really liked at that spot too, and was also deciding between, was Zay Flowers. So I don't know that in that scenario, they probably pick up a pick from Pittsburgh to move down a little bit, and they probably get Zay Flowers by some of the reports that I've seen and some of the stuff that I've heard. So I don't know that they ever would have got Christian Gonzalez. Don't know that they ever would have got Jackson Smith and Jigba, but Zay Flowers would have been a fun player in Green Bay too. We could do this stuff all day in pretty much every single draft. Don't get me wrong, but it is an interesting scenario to kind of think about. Ganon is literally a twin of Murr from Impractical Jokers. I don't know that reference. I know the show. I just have never watched it. Do we think in the opening presser we get this revealed it's actually Murr and we got pranked? Probably not, Ethan, but I have not seen the show to comment on it one way or the other. The hire is either going to be Joe Barry or Jeff Hafley, and I'm excited to take the risk. Glad they didn't go with a washed-up coordinator. Definitely bummed they didn't go young and exciting, but time tells. I think this could go in a variety of different ways. I do think there's reasons to be optimistic, as I've talked about. I think there's reasons to feel a little bit underwhelmed. But the big one, as I've, again, researched this even a little bit more and thought about it a little bit more, the big thing that I really think is important is in 2020, what was it, 2022, when he had that top 5 defense in Philly, in 2023, 1 year later, Philly's defense completely fell apart. Like they were the 30th best defense. Like it was totally different. So and there's other extenuating circumstances there and things like that, but it does show you that what Ganon was doing in 2022 was successful. And as soon as he leaves, that Philly defense was not the same. I do think that's a good sign for him overall. Happy Monday, Andy. What did you think about the Drake May hate? Mostly from Bears fans, but saw some from Packers fans. He beat the 1, 2, and 5th ranked defenses and now face, I assume, the 3rd or 4th defense. I'm not a Patriots guy, but being able to celebrate the Bears passing on quarterbacks who have won 4 rings in 8 years, for able taking a 4-team win with bad offensive line and offense to the Super Bowl is why I want to change. Hopefully the Packers are able to get it together and have a great offseason season and go on this type of run in 2026. Go Pack, go. Yeah, there's always going to be a level of jealousy when you see teams get there that, and your team didn't, right? The Rams are feeling that today. And certainly, the Broncos are feeling that to an extent as well. And so is every other team that is not playing in the Super Bowl. There is remorse from 30 other teams as to why they were not able to get to this point. Unfortunately, Green Bay is one of those 30 teams. As far as Drake May, I thought he not his greatest game yesterday. He's unbelievable. I love him. I love watching him play. He's a hell of a quarterback. I loved him in that draft. Very glad that he, didn't get to Minnesota or anything like that. And I'm glad he's not in Chicago, quite frankly, too. But no, he's really, really good. I love the fact that he called his own number, a la, kind of Bart Starr on a QB sneak. This one was obviously the naked bootleg, but what a ballsy move to not even tell anybody that you're going to go naked bootleg and just do it. And then to be able to pick up the first down. That's pretty awesome. So cool for Drake May. I love it. And I'm a huge fan. Forgot to mention McDonald winning 10 games last season with Geno and now in a Super Bowl in year 2. Anything is possible. Hopefully it'll be possible for us again soon. I think it can be, but they've got some things to clean up on their side of the equation as well, including some personnel groups, including corner, defensive tackle, offensive line, and then just figuring out how to finish games, which is going to be a huge thing for this team going forward as well. Not that it matters, but 7 touchdowns and 10 interceptions for Shedeur, and he just made the Pro Bowl. It's time to abolish the Pro Bowl. It's been far overdue. And just you just can't do it. You're better off not bringing another player than, what really sucks about it is just make Pro Bowl. And I get there's been Tyler Huntley and there's been other versions of this as well, but just make the Pro Bowl an award, like the All Pro list, right? All Pro is a little bit more distinguished and a little bit more prestige, but make the Pro Bowl. You don't have to do anything. I don't need dodgeball. I don't need flag football. I don't need any of it. And I know I'm not everyone, everyone might have their own preference and some people might like that stuff, and awesome. That's cool. If you're going to bring Shedeur Sanders, it's what are we doing? What are we doing? Just don't bring anybody in that situation. Nobody is better than Shedeur, because it taints the entire idea of like, no, you can't even say, well, he was a 7-time Pro Bowler, because Shedeur was a 1-time Pro Bowler. Like that is insane. That's absolutely insane. And it's embarrassing. Or just get rid of the conferences for it. Like, ask Jordan Love to go in that situation. Malik Willis would have been a better choice than Shedeur Sanders. There's like 20 quarterbacks. There's probably 30 quarterbacks that you should have asked before getting to Shedeur Sanders. It's insane. It is rough seeing JSN and Gonzalez make the Super Bowl. Everyone wanted one of those guys except Goody. Really needs to self-scout the first-round pick situation. So bad. It's a bummer. It sucks. Very much sucks. Packers offense had some struggles in Arizona earlier this season. Do you think that played any role in Matt hiring Gannon? I think anytime that you have something like that, it plays a role. And my guess is, what Matt saw was a defense that was pretty devoid of talent, be able to keep his offense in check. And really the only thing that you give credit, there's 2 ways that you could look at it. Either A, you sucked and didn't get the job done, or B, the opposing defensive coordinator did a really good job. And I think he probably preferred the idea that the opposing defensive coordinator did a really good job. I don't think he's wrong, by the way. I think Jonathan Gannon and obviously he wasn't the defensive coordinator, but I think Gannon and company did a really good job against Green Bay in that game. And I think that does play a part. Yeah, I talked about it a couple of weeks ago as coordinators that, or defenses that give, offensive coaches trouble are defenses that you usually want to bring in to be your coach. And I think Gannon has had a version of that. So yeah, I think it absolutely played a little bit of a part. And he was very complimentary of Jonathan Gannon, both before and after that game too. You could tell there was a lot of mutual respect there. Yes, I did see Shedeur in the Pro Bowl. Yeah, the Pro Bowl is just insanely stupid. Jordan missing the Pro Bowl saved the Packers $500,000 cap. Oh, I didn't even realize that. Yeah. So yeah, they paid for Diggs with that one vote. They're getting Shedeur in there instead of Jordan Love. So fantastic. Really feel for Devontae. Really wanted the Rams to win this one. For him, he was very emotional post game. It just, again, it's a harsh reminder of just how difficult this thing is. I know we all want Green Bay to do better. I'm certainly there as well. But I mean, we've seen, and at least in my lifetime, I know this is a while back now, but we saw the Bills lose 4 straight Super Bowls. We saw the Andy Reid Eagles just could never get to the Super Bowl. Devontae's now 0-5 in NFC or in just championship games, period. And it's really hard. And I'm not using that as an excuse for anybody or to say anybody, but it's just really, really difficult as a player, as a coach, as a fan, as a team, as whatever. It's tough to get to the Super Bowl. It is every single year. It's never getting easier. It feels like it's getting tougher by the year. And, Green Bay has those expectations every year. And when you fall short, it doesn't get any easier. It doesn't hurt any less. And for Devontae, sucks for him too, that he's had 5 opportunities and just could not find a way to get to a Super Bowl so far. Chargers just extended Tart, 3 years, 37.5 with $20 million guaranteed. Looks like the defensive tackle market is going to be a bit higher than projected. If Slayton gets cut, should we bring him home? If you're looking at people to bring home, I think Kenny Clark actually makes a little bit more sense than TJ Slayton, to be honest. And I think Clark gets cut too, but they could look at Slayton. I don't think they're going to have a huge appetite there, but they're going to have to do something at that spot. And I think you could be looking draft there. But if they could find a good run-stuffing defensive tackle, whether it is Kenny Clark or maybe TJ Slayton or maybe somebody else, then Green Bay's going to have to take a look at maybe doing that. Still trying to figure out what to think of the Ganon hire. Would rather have had Parker or Leonard. Me as well, John. I am glad they didn't go with Al Harris. Me as well, John. Look at his defensive backs, catch well but can't cover. Yeah, to me, I still think he's a good defensive backs coach. I don't know that I had a huge appetite for the defensive coordinator position. Again, we went through it on today's show. If you haven't watched it yet, highly recommend it. But there's reasons to be optimistic and there's reasons to be pessimistic. And it's ultimately going to be up to Jonathan Gannon and company to see if they can get the job done and they can take all those things that he has done well in his career and bring them to fruition and take all the things that have been an issue and mitigate those as best as possible. But you could point to things on both sides that give you reasons for optimism or pessimism. Hopefully optimism wins out and he can have a really good tenure in Green Bay. If Matt has a flaw, it's he's a bit too X's and O's focus. This may show up with the Gannon hire. By all accounts, a great X's and O's guy, but not sure he's got the personality. We're about to find out, John. We're about to find out. Yeah, I don't think Gannon is bad. Maybe he's the guy to play, get the D to play with a real toughness. I sure hope so. Again, we'll find out too. I don't know if that's the guy either. If you wanted that, maybe a Gerard Mayo or an Antonio Pierce, or I'm sure there's probably a couple other guys too, but we'll see. We'll see the type of intensity he brings to this defense, and maybe he'll surprise and really get this defense flying around and playing at a very physical and intense level. Happy Monday, Andy. Said last week I wanted Gannon. Surprised that that's where they went, though. People point to the talent on the Eagles he had, but that defense fell off a cliff after. Yeah, we just talked about that a little earlier. It was a stark contrast. And so if you're looking for positives, really, he's been a defensive coordinator 2 years in the NFL. That's it. All right. Arizona is a totally different ballgame. He was the head coach, not the coordinator, not calling the plays, and they had a crappy group of players on that defense for the most part. It's just totally different. So he's had 2 years as coordinator in the NFL. One was a pretty average year, and one was a really great year. That's not bad. That's arguably better than the 2 years that Jeff Hafley has put together in the NFL. Where I would say this year was pretty league average, and last year was good, but it wasn't top 5 good. So if you're looking at it that way, if you love Jeff Hafley's 2 years as defensive coordinator, you could argue, very easily argue and look at Jonathan Gannon and say Jonathan Gannon's 2 years as a defensive coordinator is better than Jeff Hafley's 2 years as a defensive coordinator. I don't think that's like an aggressive take to have. And the other thing I'll add too, and again, what you said, Alex, is again, as soon as he left, that Eagles defense fell apart in an aggressive way. That's a good sign for Green Bay. Saw someone on Twitter mention Trey Lance is the next reclamation project. Thoughts on that? Well, they have 2 in-house right now in Ritter and in, I'm going to forget his name. Kyle McCord. So yeah, Kyle McCord and Desmond Ritter. So they have 2 in-house. I think there's a chance that they bring somebody else in as well, whether that's somebody like a Trey Lance whether that's somebody from the draft, whether that's, who knows at this point. But I do think there might be one other addition there, and they'll have 4 quarterbacks going into camp, and then those guys will kind of compete from there. But Lance could be somebody. We'll have to see. But I'm not a huge Trey Lance guy, if I'm being honest. I don't think you can just look at Malik Willis and say, get somebody in that exact same mold. Malik Willis is, at a level of special to him that, maybe some of these other quarterbacks don't have. It's not the worst idea, but yeah, I've never been a huge Lance guy. Alex, I'm sorry, no. I was a huge Newsome guy coming out of the draft. He was bad in Cleveland. They traded him away. He was not good in Jacksonville. And yeah, I would stay away. Jacksonville was, and the fans were kind of immediately not happy with the way that Greg Newsome played once he got to Jacksonville. Cleveland fans in Cleveland was ready to get rid of him. He just hasn't had it. He just hasn't had it. I would stay away from that one. Is New England proof that you are better in the long run to be really bad for a few seasons and reset versus being consistently good but not great? Is a 3-14 season needed from time to time to get to a Super Bowl? I don't think so, Jason. It certainly is a good case study. New England proved for a lot of years that it's really good to be really good year after year too. New England's just been blessed as a franchise. Like, they've got the Brady dynasty. I don't think anybody in New England wanted to go through that reset. I think it just was something that they had to do, and credit to everybody in New England for going through it as expeditiously as they did and making it really fast through that other side and now competing for a Super Bowl again. But I don't think there's a perfect formula. I do think that there is benefit in sometimes getting some earlier draft picks, and you can always make the argument, and on a season, give me an A or give me an F, and give me a B, C, or D doesn't do a whole hell of a lot for me. But they took advantage of it. When they did have early picks, they did take a Christian Gonzalez. When they had an early pick, they did take a Drake May. And when you have those early picks, you have to take advantage of it. Green Bay could have had Christian Gonzalez. They had that top pick when they had LVN. And when you're Green Bay and you don't get to pick that high very often, you have to crush that pick. A JSN and a Christian Gonzalez are out there. They're now both playing in the Super Bowl in large part because of those two players, the huge key to both of those teams. And Green Bay's got LVN, who is a borderline starting defensive end that doesn't have a huge impact game in and game out. That's a big difference. So again, I think Green Bay has had the opportunity to get this team where it needs to go. They haven't been able to do it, but I don't think the Patriots wanted to go through that losing stretch, but I'm sure it did help them, especially to get Drake May by doing that. What a game last night. What did you think of Cooper Kupp's catch? Either way, I hate to say it, but the Seahawks have an insanely strong, really well-rounded team. To me, it was definitely a catch. I think he was a millimeter short. I do wonder if on a challenge, if that just stands, but McVay made a huge mistake in calling the timeout and not just challenging. That's a tough thing because you have to call the timeout right away. I do think the NFL should change that rule, and that if you've already called the timeout and you decide to challenge, you can still challenge and you utilize that as your timeout. Just because in those late game situations, you like, McVay doesn't have the ability to wait. He can't let all that time tick off the clock and be like, oh, do I want to challenge this or not? As 30 seconds roll off the clock, he inherently has to call a timeout right away. And he you can't wait to see if he was close to it or not to even think about a challenge. You just time out and then you go from there. So to me, I wish that there was something, that could fix that, but I don't know. I don't know what he could have done differently, honestly, in that situation. And I just wish that there was a way that you could still challenge. But I do wonder if it stands. I do wonder if it stands either way because it was so close. But that's a major what if in that game. And it's a major what if too of just like if the ref marked it short, then Seattle has the onus to challenge it. And then does that stand? It's a really interesting scenario. And you talk about it again being a game of inches. There you go. Patriots team is very complete. They're a very, very complete team. I think it's going to be a good Super Bowl. I think Seattle wins, but I think it'll be good. Justice reported the Packers top 3 in the 23 draft were Darnell Wright, LVN, and Zay Flowers. So yeah, that's what I mentioned. I think it would have been Zay if both. We know Wright was off the board. LVN would have been off the board in the scenario we talked about where New England takes him, and then Zay would have been left over. I think they would have moved down with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh would have got Broderick Jones still, probably pick up a mid-round pick, and then they take Zay Flowers with that pick. What do you make of Rob's report that he's heard from one source that Butkus is viewed as less of the problem in the O-line room and Steno is more of the issue. I've not seen that, Pack-A-Day fanatic. I'll have to take a look at that. I've not seen that yet. Seems like that could be the holdup in one of the staff changes as far as LaFleur is waiting, hoping Steno gets an OC job. Could be. Could very well be. Yeah, no, I'm not going to go in that direction. It is criminal that the Packers don't have a legitimate returner between kick returner, punt returner. You lose 20 to 40 yards per game and a muff or two a year. That's wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 level of value in a late round or a late pick plus roster spot. I talked about it today. We're well overdue on the idea that, you've got to figure out a way to fix special teams. We saw it yesterday, rear its ugly head. It's reared its ugly head for Green Bay. And when they won a Super Bowl in 2010, in 96, it's in large part due to Desmond Howard. He won the MVP, of that year. They had a good kicker. They had a good punter. They had an amazing kick and punt returner. It's far too important. They can't keep doing this. They just can't keep doing it. They've got to find a way to make it better. Darnold, Cup, 2 nice stories, but also 2 great moves by a GM. I'd be curious to know what the Seahawks fan base thought of those moves when they happened. Yeah, I don't know from a Darnold standpoint. Obviously trading away Geno and going with Darnold is an interesting move, but I at the time personally thought it was the right one. I thought Cup was washed. I still don't think he's the huge catalyst for that offense. It's JSN and it's Walker and whatever, but yeah, it's worked out well for them. And I was not a huge fan of the Cup sign. I did not want him in Green Bay at that same level of contract, but they've done a lot of other really, really great stuff. And certainly JSN and Darnold and amongst other draft picks and how they built that defense. Just some really, really smart moves by Seattle. Guess my theory on Denard Walker didn't work out. What are the chances the offense outside of Butkus gets changed? I'm thinking beyond Kraft, the other tight ends haven't played well. Yeah, I think they're going to have to add some competition and depth to the offensive line room. I would expect them to add a tight end to get ready for Luke Musgrave's departure in 2027. And also just knowing that, you kind of need a number 3 tight end here and somebody that can push him for snaps and maybe be a better blocker. I think that's it. I think running back will probably look fairly similar. I think quarterback will have a new backup quarterback. Receiver, Dobbs will be gone. But other than that, it's going to look very similar. Probably a new number 2 to 3 tight end somewhere, a hybrid. Yeah, you probably have Musgrave as the 2 and then the other guy maybe pushing him for snaps a little bit. But offensively, we'll see if they do anything with Butkus, Steno, or anything else. And then I think the other big thing, again, would be just more depth and competition on that offensive line. Not going to go against the bend, but I'm not against the bend, but don't break per se. But when your D-line is beat up and being worn down, you have to change approach. Maybe not so easy to do, but we didn't see that from Hafley at the end. It's an interesting conversation to have, John, because if I'm going to say what Jeff Hafley was able to do, let's just take the playoff game. I think is probably the best example of this. That they got run over by Baltimore, right? The Vikings game wasn't a real football game. The Bears game prior, that was on the road, he was awesome. They held him to what, 6 points, 9 points, whatever it was, up until the onside kick. If you recover an onside kick, the defense has an unbelievable day. And then against the Bears, you're 3 quarters in and you've allowed 6 points. You have to have been able to put the game away by that point. And it's not absolving Jeff Hafley of what happened in the fourth quarter entirely. But what I will say is, that defense at that point in time is stuck together with chewing gum and Band-Aids and bits of string, etc. You have to be able to, to be up by enough and finish that game off in all phases, that if you've allowed 6 points to Chicago by the end of the third quarter, it's not in reach and you can't lose that game. And they found a way to lose that game, unfortunately. And again, their defense collapsed in the fourth quarter, no question, but you knew they weren't going to be able to keep it up forever just with the deficiencies they had on defense. I think Jeff Hafley deserves credit for just getting it to that point and having a chance in that game based on the lack of talent after Wyatt and especially, Edgerrin Cooper goes down in that game. Micah's already out. It's a tough situation to be in. Read somewhere that Ganon likes to run a lot of 3 safety looks. If that's the case, would we kick Bullard to safety and Hobbs in the slot, or keep Bullard in the slot and have Oladapo at safety? I need to go and watch this a little bit more. They didn't play a lot of dime. So if they're in 3 safety looks, I'm assuming you're still in nickel, but I need to go and see exactly what that means as to how they were kind of getting away with 3 safety looks. And if it's different than Halfley and what he was doing with his 3 safety looks. But I don't know. I have to go and look at that a little bit more. For the defensive position coaches, is that something that matters? LaFleur tends to hire for his defensive coordinator, or are those positions that are left up to the defensive coordinator to choose? Yeah, we talked about that a little bit earlier. I would assume that will be a collaborative approach. I'm sure Matt's going to go to bat for some of his guys. I'm sure, Ganon's going to say, hey, these are the 2 guys that I really need. If his defensive coordinator, by the way, who is a known linebackers coach, that could be an obvious fit. If Duggan goes to Miami with Jeff Halfley, and then you can hire his defensive coordinator as your new linebackers coach, I think that makes a ton of sense. I think it'll ultimately come together well, but I think there's going to be a little bit of a give and take there for sure. How would you assess linebacker playing coverage this season? How key will that be with Ganon potentially going with a lot of cover 4 stuff? I thought it was really up and down, and I thought they really struggled in their drops. But what I want to say with that is, I don't know how Jeff Halfley was coaching it. I don't know if Halfley's saying, hey, we want you to be ultra aggressive coming down to play the run. And if they have to throw over the top of you and you didn't get to your drop in time, we're willing to live with that. Or if he's saying you need to get to your drops and then play the run, if that's the case, then they played it very poorly. They never really made the corrections on it. So it's tough to glean sometimes exactly what the coaches are asking them to do. Do you want to play run first, or do you want to play pass first on those play action fakes? All right. Or on the potential run plays? Do you want to stay, getting depth and say, all right, pass. Okay, they handed it off. Now we can go attack. Or do you want to say, all right, looks like a pass play, we're going to go, or it looks like a run play, run. And now all of a sudden it's, quarterback has the ball and try to retreat back into pass coverage. There's a give and take there, and it could be different, and we don't know exactly what they're being asked to do. So it's tough to say, but I thought it was up and down, and I thought they struggled getting depth on their drops far too many times. Talked about that. Probably going into this defensive coordinator hire cautiously optimistic. I'm not ready to start the fire Ganon chance yet. I did joke yesterday, Pearly, that fire Ganon does have a great feel to it. Fire Barry, awesome. Fire Ganon right there. Fire Pettin was okay. Fire Capers was awesome. Fire Halfley never really had the right feel to it. Maybe that's why he was successful. Maybe this should be a red flag. But Fire Ganon definitely, and maybe it's because it sounds like Fire the Cannon, Fire the Ganon. It has a great feel to it. So that is one upside, is if you do get to the point where you don't like, if you don't like Ganon, Fire Ganon, it has a nice ring to it. And I don't know what Steno does, but want someone who challenges LaFleur. Ralph, do you know that he doesn't challenge LaFleur? I don't know either. I don't know. Maybe he is the one that challenges LaFleur more than anybody. I have no idea. No idea. I'm certain we trade up at least 8 spots day 2 somewhere. I don't know. I think Goody might want more draft picks, not less. He usually likes around 10. I don't know, that like 8 spots is probably your 4th round pick at worst. Or at best, however you want to view it. I don't know that he's like, you only are going to get a 2nd, 3rd, and a 4th, and everything else is a crapshoot. Even a 4th's a crapshoot. Are you willing to give up a 2nd and a 4th to move 8 spots up in round 2? I don't think so. I would be willing to bet that he either stands pat or trades down. I would be, if you can get like up 3 to 4 spots, maybe for a 5th or a 5th and a 7th, maybe, but I don't know. I would say there's more likelihood that he stays or trades back. Watching the Patriots get to another Super Bowl really makes me want to be less interested in the Packers. It's getting old, but I'm such a passionate fan. Yeah, I don't know why that would be the case, Ralph. The struggle is part of the journey. Enjoy it. It's never going to be perfect, but that's why we do it. I mean, imagine being a freaking Brewers fan. I mean, my God, seeing what the Dodgers can do every single year, what the Yankees and the Mets and the Cubs, etc., can do. And you're a 100 million payroll team, and you know that you're just so far against the 8 ball, and you're basically screwed every year. But it's part of the struggle. We still do it anyway. We cheer them on. We don't care. We're going to go to the games. We're going to eat, hot dogs and get beer, and we're going to have fun doing it. Enjoy the struggle. Embrace the struggle. The journey is as good as the end. In fact, in far more cases, the journey is better than the end. Just something to remember. Do you think Hopper is good enough to slide into McDuffie's role and Duffy take over for Quay? I would prefer not. I would prefer if you're going to move on from Quay, can you bring in a Caden Ellis? Can you bring in a Leo Chanel? Can you bring in somebody else there? But it's a possibility. And if you had to sacrifice, for instance, by moving on from Quay, and that gives you the money to go and spend on corner, defensive line, offensive line, I'm probably okay with it. You maybe take a linebacker in the 4th or 5th round to go along with, the 3 guys that you already have, maybe catch, something there that can be really good for you. But yeah, I would, and I'm not a huge Quay guy. I would probably look for something in kind of like value free agency if you can find something. Ellis and Chanel probably go more than that, but I would probably try to find something a little bit different there. Go Pack, go. Remember, the Bears still suck, and will always suck. Absolutely, Aaron. Chance Kenny Clark is a Packer again. 2%, Matt. I don't think it's super likely. I do think he gets cut. I do think Kenny probably isn't super thrilled about getting traded. I don't know how much of a grudge that is. Green Bay doesn't have a ton of money. Green Bay doesn't like old players. It probably is not going to be a fit, but I wouldn't rule it out entirely. Green Bay does probably need to sign released free agents and not unrestricted free agents, so that does give it some possibility. And certainly I was going to say knows the system, but nobody knows the system anymore because it's a new system. So we'll see. My red flag is watching the rest of the league special teams and thinking the Packers would have screwed that up anytime they do something remotely decent. Alex, you are not wrong, my friend. That is a fair assessment to make. With Ganon taking over as DC, what are the odds we bring back Quay? Is it worth it? This still feels like a coin flip. Who was it? Was it Justice that said, like, hey, they haven't had conversations with Quay? Or was it maybe an article from Pete Doherty? I forget what it was, but if those conversations aren't happening, it would certainly lead me to believe that he's not likely to be back. But I could make a case, and as I've said all off season, to me, this is a numbers game. If it's 8 million or less, I'm cool with him coming back, and I think you could do that per year. I mean, if it's 9 million or more, I'm probably out and try to go in a different direction. And as I just mentioned, I would probably say, hey, is there a way that we can upgrade or do something a little bit different / better? All right, what do we get happening here? Dolphins are hiring Ryan Downard. All right, that's a bummer. He's a good coach. That's a bummer. Yeah, so he's heading to Miami. Looks like looks like that's the most recent news. I'm just going to see if there's anything else here. Yeah, looks like the main one. All right, so Ryan Downard heading to Miami. I don't think we have any other news there, but that's the big one. I don't know what the position is, but that's a big loss. I think he's one of the better coaches on the team. In fact, the other day when we did our awards, he was my coach of the year for Green Bay. All right. Congrats to Patriots fans for getting through a rough half decade. Was it even that long? I don't even know if it was that long. I have the Seahawks in the Super Bowl, Ralph. Number of people on Twitter who seem to be actively rooting for everything Matt LaFleur does to fail really pisses me off. I know they're just a vocal minority, but don't be a fan if you're not rooting for the team. I will say, and again, I've said over and over, I love the passion of the fans and not going to tell anybody how to fan. It's been disappointing to see how much just, I don't know if I want to just almost anger, borderlining on whining of like, why isn't everything going our way? I understand there's real reasons to be frustrated. Don't get me wrong. I'm not thrilled with the overall outcome of a 5-game losing streak at the end of the season. I think we all want it to be better, but man, it just feels very negative out there on those Packers streets. And again, I do think you're right, Alex. I think it's a vocal minority, but yeah, just a little bit disappointing. And again, it's not to say that everything's perfect and that things don't need to change and get better. And we'll talk about a lot of those things this offseason right here, but it is interesting. Goody has certainly made some good first-round picks, but why is he better on day 2 or 3 than day 1? Just because of more volume of picks or more chances? There's probably some truth to that, but listen, it's not okay from a first round standpoint. Now, I still think Matthew Golden's going to be really good. I don't think there's any question about it. I think he's going to be a really good wide receiver. I think we saw glimpses of that, especially in that Bears game at the end. And there's still some hope, obviously, for Devontae Wyatt, LVN to have huge impacts this next year, but it needs to be better. There needs to be more, blue chip players from the first round in Green Bay. And again, we don't have to worry about it for this year or next year because there's no first round picks, but it is something that is of real concern. I don't know. I feel they need to get some guys who produce in college, not just these high upside athletes that are improving. I might be completely off there. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, okay, here's how the draft goes, Beast Bumblebee. Okay. More often than not, this isn't a perfect scenario, but your top 10, top 15 guys are guys that are immaculate. They freak athletes, produced in college, had all the splash plays, played at big time schools. When you say check every box, they don't have injury issues. They don't have off-field issues. It's immaculate, right? Maybe top 10 is, or maybe even top 5 is more for that. And then maybe, top 10 through the rest of the first round is maybe a guy that's missing one of those, right? You don't have maybe quite the production or maybe quite the traits, or maybe you were at a smaller school, or maybe there's one thing that's missing, but you're checking all the rest of the boxes. By the time you get to the second round, you're already, now there's a couple things. You either had some real off-field issues, or you didn't produce at a high enough level, or you don't have quite the athletic traits. And you have to decide, do I want the traits or do I want the production? And then you get further down the draft, and now there's more holes. Maybe you have unbelievable traits. Jeff Janis, right? You're Jeff Janis. Your traits are insane, but you've had no production, small school. There's questions about your tape. Your technique's all the way off, but you have first round top 5 traits. All right. Maybe it works. Maybe it doesn't. Or you get to, somebody like Carrington Valentine, who maybe, again, doesn't have elite traits, or Rasheed Walker, who maybe doesn't have elite traits, but they've got some productivity. They've started at a big time school. It's a sliding scale of what you are willing to accept. And you can make an argument that in the first round that Green Bay still is putting too much of an emphasis on those traits. I think you're not wrong in that assessment, but LVN is a great example. And this was my big issue with Rashawn Gary, is Rashawn Gary at pick 12, whatever it was, I think it was pick 12 to me. When you're picking top 12, you shouldn't have to have 2 of those things unchecked. And to me, in college, Rashawn Gary did not have the productivity, and he had if you remember, he had a shoulder issue that there was real concern of what he was going to be able to do in his rookie year. And so if I'm picking top 12, I'm not taking a guy who doesn't have production and has a real injury risk. That was my huge issue with it. It wasn't that Gary wasn't a talented player, but it was that, he should have been probably a late first round guy based on having 2 of those boxes unchecked. And Green Bay took him top 12. LVN, if you're picking in what was it, pick 14 or whatever he ended up going, 13. If you're taking him at pick 13, I don't need somebody who barely had snaps in college, like 400 snaps per year in college, and was still a breakout candidate and didn't have the productivity. That, I think, is where Green Bay needs to clean that up. Those are okay things to do. And especially when Green Bay was consistently picking at the end of the first round, like if you got a Rashawn Gary or an LVN or somebody like that at the end of the first round, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like that's the point where you have to start, gambling on the upside and saying, well, like in order to get somebody like this, we have to kind of take a risk a little bit. Okay. You shouldn't have to do it at pick 12. You shouldn't have to do it at pick 13. That's what I would say. Do you think policy has it in the back of his head? Like, boy, Goody misses on a lot of people. Our scouting department can't seem to find dogs in it. No, because I think the roster is really good. And I think he's found a lot of late round, mid round guys that have been really helpful. And he found a franchise quarterback. So I don't think that's in his calculus at all right now. The worst one was the Commanders taking Forbes 1 pick before Gonzalez. Yeah, no question. All right, I do have to go lightning round because I got to get out of here in about 5 minutes. Ganon is going to find out Goody ain't Howie from Philly. If we need a corner, Goody will draft a future free agent position instead. Good luck. The corner room was a major issue this year, and it needs to be better. Stokes was just coming off his second year. Then, right, wouldn't it make sense that they didn't think they needed Gonzalez when they had Jair and Eric, who they probably felt had a bright future still? Sure, but, if you're going to preach best player available, then you need to take best player available at the end of the day. Do you think Ganon brings in his own guys? Yeah, we talked about that. Former Packers Bull, Snyder versus Wolf. I mean, Schneider, not Snyder, but Schneider versus Wolf. Yes. If it was between Morris and Ganon, I probably honestly would have gone Ganon, but you could have flipped a coin and I wouldn't have had a huge preference. Neither were top guys on my list, but I probably would have taken, I think gun to my head prior to, I think I would have taken Ganon slightly over Morris. Not by much though. Jordan or Caleb or Goff over Sanders. Yeah. Tough call. What coordinators could you see coming in to Green Bay if Stenavich leaves? Again, my guess is they stay in house and it's probably Jason Vrabel, Nathaniel Hackett, or Luke Getsy, something like that if they do. But there's some good coaches out there that they could go and look at. We'll take a look at it in a deeper dive. I want to say Wendell Fajeda. I always say it wrong. A to Z Sports, who covers the unbelievable job covering the Packers. I think he put a list together of potential offensive coordinators. I'd recommend checking that out. Gannon could become a Spags or Fangio as someone who failed as a head coach who becomes a lifetime coordinator and a real good one at that. Definitely possible. Spooky, cheers to you as well. Gannon's defense have had a true nose. You think that'll be a priority for Green Bay this offseason? It should be either way. Even if that's not what he wants, they need somebody that's a better run defender. No question. Don't know. Cheesehead Joey, I don't know when they'll officially announce it, but probably sometime this week. Halfley did say he's going to call plays in Miami. As an Ohio State fan, anyone but Kyle McCord can be our backup. Yeah, it was not ideal. I don't think McCord will be the backup. I wouldn't be too concerned if I were you. Maybe instead of a wide receiver returner, they could find a cornerback who can be a returner. There was one of those, Jordan, in the NFL this year. One corner returner. And it was Marcus Jones for New England, who's also just happens to be a really good corner too. So I actually looked at that at the trade deadline because I knew they didn't have the room at wide receiver, right? So I'm like, who else returns punts and or kicks, but specifically punts, that's not a wide receiver? Marcus Jones for New England. That was it. Tough to find. Yes, I did win over that. Huge bummer that they lost him. Just really dislike the defensive coordinator hire. Another safe. I don't think it's safe. I actually don't think you would say it's safe. I agree, though, that I would have liked more blitz and aggressive defense, but maybe Gannon's got a little bit of that in him, too. Maybe he changes things up a little bit. Just started watching Pack-A-Day this season and love the content. If we cut Gary, do you think we keep Enagbare? And would he compete with Van Ness for the starting spot opposite Micah? I do think there's a good chance they cut Gary. First of all, thank you for the kind words. I do think there's a good chance they cut Gary. I think Enagbare will come down to what he can get on the open market. If they can get him back at a reasonable rate, I think they would like to do so. I would think LVN would be the leader in the clubhouse to start opposite of Micah. But to begin the season, then it would be Enagbare and LVN starting while Micah gets healthy. And then eventually you have that battle between Enagbare and LVN who ultimately starts opposite Micah Parsons. Looking back at 2018, only Darnold has made the Super Bowl. That's a crazy thing. Therefore, Sam Darnold is better than Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Baker Mayfield. It's a crazy thing to think about. Man, do you think that Matt talked to the vets about players in the league's personality perception of Gannon? Or maybe Bo Melton has insight from his bro? Don't know. I would assume that you maybe at least have a conversation with Micah Parsons and maybe a Xavier McKinney. I would assume you have a conversation with a couple, but I don't know if they did or how many, if they did do that, how many players they would have talked to. I don't know what Steno does, but I want him gone because I don't like the sound of Fire Stenovich. Need a better name. Well said, Beast. Considering we are in an era of big leg kickers, do you think that the competition committee is going to look for narrowing the goalposts and or pushing the extra points? Try back. I don't think so, because guess what? They like points. Yeah, downer to Miami is a bummer. Green Packers fans have never annoyed me as much as they have this year with all of the negativity. When you're so negative that your reaction to the wildcard game is fire Matt and cut Love, anyone that's saying cut Love, you can just ignore. Or even trade Love or not appreciative of Love, just ignore. Who could make sense as a safety coach? Go hire Nick Collins. That'd be fun. He was on the what was that, like the coaching pathway thing or whatever? I forget what it's called. But yeah, I'll be interested to see who they bring in. That's a big loss for that defensive backfield. Why do fans keep saying that the Packers have a culture issue? They seem to be a consistent team year after year. I think it's a Super Bowl winning culture issue is what they're really saying, Sean. It's not an overall culture issue. The culture is great in Green Bay. Everyone raves about it. But do you have a Super Bowl winning culture is I think what people are saying. You think having less underclassmen helps or hurts the quality of the draft? I think it's going to take a few years for that to play out. If you ultimately get players that are now better coming out of college and are more NFL ready when they come out, I think it can be better. I think there's this maybe interim period where you're still getting used to this change, where it might be worse right now. I'm hoping in the long term, it actually ends up being a good thing. Why haven't we heard from Goody or Matt? Goody, I don't know. I think probably part of it was getting Goody and Matt their contracts done and things like that to start off with. And then now you've got all these coaching changes. It doesn't make sense for Matt to talk until you finalize Ganon and some of the other coaching staff probably at this point. I would still expect Goody to be, they'll probably do an introductory press conference for Ganon this week or maybe early next week. And LaFleur will talk then as well. And I wonder if they just couple that with Goody's end of year press conference at the same time. But I ultimately don't know the answer. Just saying, I use corners as returners in Madden all the time, and it works for me, so the Packers should do it too. To be fair, Bo Melton did get used as a kick returner, so there you go. And he's kind of a corner. Think Sorrell takes a second-year leap this coming year? That'd be awesome. He showed some flashes for sure. I hope he can take a step in year 2. Promote McKinney to safety coach and player. He could probably do it. If anyone could, it'd probably be him. Cornerbacks have bad hands, can't catch, returning kicks, punt, seem suboptimal. That's why there was one, Marcus Jones, right? It's not super common. All right, friends, I do have to get going. Oh, Jordan got one in. Do you think Diggs can come back on a team-friendly deal and compete with Stevie or Nixon? I don't think it's impossible. I'm not necessarily holding my breath on it, but it would be something that I think is within at least some realm of possibility, but we'll see. I do have to get going. I have a podcast I got to get ready for here at 4 o'clock. Thankfully, I was able to get all of your questions. Thank you so much for all the wonderful questions. Thank you so much for all your support. I appreciate it a ton. I will see you guys Friday for happy hour for live shows. We'll be back tomorrow with Justice Mosqueda for a Aftermath episode, which I know is usually everyone's favorites, and looking forward to talking to Justice a little bit later today. See you guys soon. Enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully no more coaches lost to Miami in the meantime, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.